But Austin Ekeler, at 28 years old, you're going to say he is bust proof.
I am. And the caveat is that I would have told you last year, and I might have told you last year, that Jonathan Taylor is completely bust proof. And he ended up being a bust last year. Injury played a huge role. He suffered a high ankle sprain early in the season. And we've said this before, the high ankle sprain is a death knell on a fantasy player's production, and it's hard to bounce back from that, at least within the next couple of weeks. Let's move to Ekeler. I think he's the least or the most bust proof among running backs. I think that he's the most likely to continue churning out huge production. What is that huge production? Over 20 PPR fantasy points per game each of the last 2 years. Name me a running back that has averaged over 20 PPR points per game over the last 2 years. Don't even try. You can't do it. There isn't one. The closest one is actually Derrick Henry, who was at 19.1 last year. In your face for everybody that's like, you need a ton of targets to do it. Derrick Henry says no way. But Ekeler did it, and it's because he had a ton of targets. Absolutely nothing has been added to the Chargers running back room this offseason. We were worried about that. And that means they're going to try and put Joshua Kelly in the secondary role. Maybe Isaiah Spiller gets another chance. But I'd be surprised if either of those guys takes away more work than any running back has over the last 3 seasons from Austin Ekeler. And I just love that Kellen Moore is the play caller now. They've got a guy who's going to be aggressive and probably throw. I was going to make the case that he's going to throw even more. That's probably not going to happen. He's going to throw a little bit less, or call pass plays a little bit less. And even with Quentin Johnson being there, I don't think Johnson takes away from Ekeler. And he's still going to have all the major high value roles that we want in a fantasy running back. And the cherry on top, yeah, he's 28. This guy gets out of bounds a lot. This guy goes down on the first tackle sometimes when he knows he can't get any extra yards. He's smart with his body, hasn't gotten hurt in each of the last 2 years. In fact, 3 of the last 4 years, he hasn't missed a game. The guy's bionic. Can't put him on the same level as Derrick Henry in that regard, but he's close to it, and he's catching more passes. He is the most bust-proof running back that you can get in fantasy this year.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Dan. You guys
strong case
right in after that.
Strong case. But I think if I'm going to focus on a devil's advocate, and I also am a fan of Ekeler this season from a value standpoint, if I'm going to focus on the devil's advocate side of this and the things that could kind of slow him down, the first one I'm going to touch on is just it's just the pure idea of touchdown regression here, right? Because Ekeler obviously had a lot of touchdowns last season, a little more than his typical norm there, and honestly high compared to the rest of the NFL at that position. Now, this season, they add Quentin Johnson to the mix, a first-round wide receiver. And is it possible that with a change in offensive coordinator with Kellen Moore, we could see a different style of offense in the red zone? Or not even a different style, but just a different funneling of the targets and the touches in the red zone. And that could potentially take away from some of Ekeler's touchdowns, which led to a lot of points, especially now that you add Quentin Johnson to the mix, who can potentially be a red zone threat. I'm still, remain to be seen on that. He's a big player, but he doesn't really play like a big receiver. But I still think, on the crossers and on the mesh type concepts, he's going to be a big body who can get open underneath. So we'll see what happens there. I would also say that the addition of Quentin Johnston and Kellen Moore to the mix could change the overall target volume. That's the second thing that would be my concern there for Austin Ekeler. I think Adam did a good job breaking this down in the notes, but he averaged a career low in yards per catch last season, Austin Ekeler, and in ADOT. Those are 2 receiving stats that have been related, according to Adam. And I think that's something interesting to note, especially when you look at
for
Austin Ekeler. Sorry,
super low ADOTs, like negative ADOTs. Basically, he's had low yards per catch when they were throwing to him across the line of scrimmage. Then it's fine. But yeah, I have more to say about this. But go ahead.
I do apologize for trying to mansplain an Azer stat. No one should ever do that. But anyway, that stat included, as well as Kellen Moore just in general is not really an offensive coordinator that's called a very pass heavy to the running backs type game scripts. He's been 24th and 23rd in RB targets twice as an offensive coordinator with Dallas. And with the added weapon in Quentin Johnston, I think there's a chance this offense goes a little bit differently in 2023, takes that next step. If we're all expecting Justin Herbert to take the step that we are expecting in this passing game to be more intermediate based and more downfield based and vertical oriented, then if that all happens, I think there's going to be fewer targets for Austin Ekeler. I think that's where the touchdown regression, it is what it is. But the passing game involvement, he had 127 targets last year. That just doesn't seem to me like that's going to repeat this season.
No, and you left out a couple of something about Kellen Moore, though, is that, yes, he was 4 seasons as Cowboys coordinator, and in 2 of those seasons, the Cowboys were 23rd and 24th in RB targets. The other 2 seasons, they were 13th and they were 9th.
I thought that's how you do the Azer stat. You pick
No.
and choose, and you cherry pick, and you find the ones that fit your narrative. No?
Absolutely not. That's not. Those are Schneier stats. But in terms of the targets, 127 targets in 17 games last year. 2021, when Keenan Allen and Mike Williams were actually healthy, he was on pace for 100 targets in 17 games. And in the 5 games in 2022 that Keenan Allen and Mike Williams were healthy, Ekeler was on pace for 78 targets. So I do think he definitely benefited from those injuries. So if I were going to make a case against Ekeler, it would be that he will see fewer targets. I do believe he will see fewer targets. 127 is crazy. As long as 2 of the 3 wide receivers, if we include Quentin Johnston, stay healthy, he'll see fewer targets. And the touchdowns, I mean, it's actually been 2 years in a row. He scored 20 total touchdowns in 2021. He scored 20. He scored 18 in 2022. Honestly, Dave, that's the only thing. If somehow he loses his goal line role, then I guess but I do not see that happening at all. No. So he'll have fewer catch. He's just so involved, though. I mean, he'll be fine. He's pretty bust proof in full PPR. In non and half PPR, I think it's different, though, Dave. I don't know.
I agree. In non and half PPR, is he even a top 5 pick in non PPR? I would say no. Like, I think that's where you could pivot to Derrick Henry, because it's hard to imagine him having the type of touchdown production a 3rd year in a row, north of 15. I think if you expect him to have around 14 touchdowns, let's just call it that total, I think he can get you there. But he could exceed it. What's really slowing him down from doing it? I don't really know if there is one, other than the receiving core, maybe staying healthy, Quinn Johnson playing a bigger role. The only reason why I don't have Ekeler, this is funny, as the number 1 guy is because I was reminded last year. I went on a video show last year and told them that I liked Taylor as my number 1 guy. And they said, you can't do that. He was the number 1 running back last year. Guys never, ever repeat. And Ekeler was the number 1 fantasy running back on a PPR per game basis last year. So just on that stat alone, I put McCaffrey ahead of him. But if you don't believe in that stat, or if you think that Ekeler is good enough to do it, then Ekeler should be your number 1 running back in your rankings.
When was the last time it happened? Was it LaDainian Tomlinson?
No, we did this.
It's Gurley.
It was Todd Gurley.
It was Gurley. Okay, yep, the back-to-back Gurley years. I knew, remember, in the mid 2014.
And a forgotten superstar for
yeah,
fantasy football, Todd Gurley. Okay, we got 3 more names here, and let's speed it up a little bit.
Okay,
Saquon Barkley, another 1st-round running back. Dan, you are making a bust-proof case for Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, quick case here. There's not as much of a ceiling, I don't think, with Ekeler, but I think there's as much of a floor, and that's what we're doing here. We're doing bust-proof players here, and it just comes down for Barkley to the involvement in the offense. They asked Darius Slayton at OTAs yesterday. They said to him, are you worried about getting stats and targets now the Giants have added all these weapons? He's like, no, because I don't really care about this stuff, and this offense still runs through Saquon Barkley, and that's the truth of it. This offense does run through Saquon Barkley. His involvement, not only from a total snap standpoint, which is kind of not unmatched, but really only matched by a handful or fewer of running backs in the NFL right now, is one thing, but it's also the passing game involvement, which once again is only really matched by a handful of fewer of running backs. Led the Giants in targets last year. I expect him to lead the Giants in targets again this year. That might seem odd considering they added Darren Waller and Jalen Hyatt, but if you look at how this offense operates, they've tried to simplify things for Daniel Jones and make things really, really easy, because that's a smart way to add efficiency to any quarterback in the NFL. So if he doesn't like his first read in the passing game, he has 2 options. He either takes the B gap and runs if it's there, or he hits the flare route to Saquon Barkley, which is always there. And then worst case scenario, you get Saquon Barkley one-on-one in space. I don't see why he's going to go away from that this year. It was a source of very easy yards last year, was a source of big plays at times when Saquon Barkley made someone miss. So I still think he's going to be a big part of the progression in the passing game with those flare routes. And that doesn't even go into the potential for him to kind of work more in the passing game. We saw some flashes in the screen game last year. We also saw some flashes when they lined him up outside in the slot. And I think that's something they're going to try to build on as well with the 2nd year in the system for Barkley. Obviously, all this is contingent on him signing with the Giants and playing under the franchise tag. I think he'll get a multi-year deal or play under the tag. I don't think he's sitting out this season. I just don't really foresee any of that happening. So the involvement here is matched by very few running backs at this point. Like, if you look at Ekeler's obviously in the mix, but so few running backs are getting that percentage of snaps and that kind of involvement in the passing game. obviously you look at some of the negatives here. His explosives went down a little bit. Adam brought it up. He had 5 carries of 29 yards in his first 5 games, then went through that lull and then really didn't have another long carry until the playoff game. But I don't know if he's that same kind of explosive player that has RB1 or RB2 potential anymore. But we're talking about bust-proof players. And when you have that kind of volume and involvement in the passing game, and in the red zone where, there is some thoughts like, oh, maybe they brought in Waller, Hyatt, they can throw more in the red zone. I don't know if that's the case. They did so much of their success in the red zone was via Saquon Barkley running the football. And I think that's a big part of his game. He's a really tough runner in the red zone. He's a powerful back. He gets behind his pads in the red zone. He's 230 pounds and he can kind of force his way through or leap over the defender. So I still think he's going to have double-digit touchdowns with a big involvement in the passing game and a lot of snaps overall. That to me is a bust-proof type player.
So Dan already mentioned the first thing. The explosives went down for him in his comeback season from 2021, where he really didn't look great. So obviously better than his 2021 season, but not as good as when he was a rookie or even a second-year player. He had 352 touches last year. What happened the last time he had over 300 touches? He came back in his second season, and he was still really good for fantasy on 269 touches in 13 games. Over 1,400 total yards, 8 touchdowns, 1 fumble, still a must-start type of fantasy running back. I am a little bit worried about what happens this year if he gets another heavy workload, which I think is probably going to happen because it makes sense to utilize him that way. He's their lead running back. The offensive line's good. Defenses will eventually have to respect the pass against the Giants with all that they've added in the receiving core this offseason. Remember that point. But yeah, Saquon Barkley is going to get a lot of work. Could he break down again, potentially, or not even break down, but just not be as efficient? Because he wasn't as efficient in his second year as he was in his first year. And that was because he was coming off a year with over 350 touches. That's exactly the case that he's going to be in this year. So I think he takes a little bit step back statistically this year, but not enough to make you worried. What worries me just as much, if not more, is all the capital that the Giants spent to improve their receiving core. They've got, who's their big get? Was Waller. Waller was their big get. And yes, he is going to make an impact in the red zone, just like he did in Las Vegas. Here's some other names: Jalen Hyatt, Paris Campbell, Jamison Crowder. Individually, they don't mean much for fantasy. Collectively, those are 3 new guys joining a receiving core that dealt with a lot of injured players who are coming back, like Sterling Shepard, and Wan'Dale Robinson will eventually make his way back. Now they've got a deep group. There has to be a reason why the Giants went so crazy to add pass catchers. It could be as simple as, all right, we didn't really like all the guys that we had last year. We only had 1 good perimeter receiver in Hodgins. We didn't really get that slot receiver that we wanted. Darius Slayton is just okay. We just need more competition there and more explosiveness there. That's fine, but they're going to utilize that. And so maybe my concern about getting a ton of touches for Saquon is being overstated, because they might throw the ball a little bit more with all these fun receivers that they've added to their group. That does mean fewer touches theoretically, and it might not be much. It could be 2 per game for Saquon Barkley. I think he's going to be good for about what he was in his second season, maybe 9 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns. He could get there. I don't want to short him there. But I do think that the chance of him being, like you said, Dan, RB1 or RB2, yeah, I don't know if I see it. It's one of the reasons why I kind of like Bijan Robinson better.
Couple things about that 2019 season. 2018, Barkley was the best running back in fantasy as a rookie. 2019, he hurt his ankle and he missed some time.
Ankle sprain.
Yeah, high ankle
There
sprain.
it is.
Right. And when he came back, he hurt his ankle again, and it was a different injury. So I don't know how much stock I put into that season because he was playing hurt for almost all of it. Tore his ACL the next year. 2021 was just an awful season coming back from the torn ACL. Jason Garrett as the offensive coordinator, they were 31st in scoring. Last year was a lot better. But if I'm making a bust case for Barkley, it's simple. He has not been an elite running back since his rookie season. He was, I would say, for the first 5 or 6 games of the last season, and then it just started. Then he just started to be kind of a volume guy. But when you watched him play, you still saw the explosiveness. I mean, in that playoff game, some of the plays he made against the Vikings were just incredible. So I still think he's an elite running back, even if the numbers don't bear it out. But yeah, okay, they became a passing team second half of the year. He was getting about 15 carries per game. He was saved by his touchdowns and by his receptions totals. If they go back to being a passing game, and Dan's talked about this, they were going 3 receiver sets a lot more. They were also losing a lot more. All right. They struggled in the second half of the year after their schedule got harder, and it's going to get harder this year. Right. If they go back to being a passing team and Darren Waller really cuts in. He's really the only one I'm very worried about. Maybe Wan'Dale Robinson. The other guys are like, whatever. But if they really cut into his target share, there's your bust case for Barkley. Fewer carries and fewer targets. And he's still like a 4.4 yards per carry guy instead of a 5 yards per carry guy like he was as a rookie. That's the bust case for Saquon Barkley. But I do think he's the best player on their team offensively. And I agree with it basically, Dan. I think there's a case, and I think we all agree with Dan. That's why he's a first round pick. But I think there's a case, but he's the focal point of their team.
Volume is so key in fantasy football, especially these days at running back. There's just so few guys. And when I say volume, I don't just mean the carries. I mean that passing game involvement. There's so few guys with both.